Hey guys, I'm Toni Sanchez with that hashtag show, and we're hanging out at New York Comic Con 2019 with Rebecca Roanhorse. Hi.
Hello, hi, how are you?
Good. So you wrote a Star Wars.
I did write a Star Wars.
It's called Resistance Reborn.
Resistance Reborn.
Awesome, and it's going to be connecting Last Jedi with Rise of Skywalker.
That's right. It's sort of like the bridge book between the two movies.
So how much of what's in the book is informed by what Lucasfilm and the folks that's over there have like told you what's going to happen, and or were you sort of just given, sort of a loose idea?
Well, everything is informed by Last Jedi. It picks up right where Last Jedi left off.
Okay.
The Resistance is sort of in ruins, and this book is all about rebuilding that leadership, bringing people together. You're going to see some old faces you haven't seen for a long time. You're going to have different folks coming in from everything from the games, from Battlefront to Poe comic books. You'll see Black Squadron, Inferno Squadron, and all sorts of new characters as well as the familiar faces.
So how much was provided to you in order for you to like sort of get the story going?
So Lucasfilm and Del Rey had an idea of what they wanted. So they gave me a couple of paragraphs of here's what we sort of want you to focus on. And then they let you run with it. So from there I came up with, like a 15-page outline that everybody read and approved. And then they were like, tell your story. We want to hear what you have to say.
So I know that you've said before that you are a Star Wars fan. You have been for a good long while. So how much of your own just like, oh, here's my chance, and like, I can add this and that. Like, how much of that went into this story?
I got to make up planets and characters and, add my own spin on that. And then I got to deep dive into existing characters, sort of mental space, get in their heads. And so that was kind of awesome. It was really a balance between, what already existed and then what I wanted to add, because they were very adamant that they wanted me to add stuff. They wanted me to tell my own version of the story. So there was actually a lot of freedom to do that.
So what's been the coolest experience so far? Like, have you gotten like behind the scenes looks of what's coming up for Rise of Skywalker? Have you been to the ranch? Like, what's the coolest thing that Rebecca has gotten to do?
Well, I can make no comments about the movie because they're watching me. But I got to go to Lucasfilm, and that was pretty awesome, I have to say. So I got to see a little bit behind the scenes of, the sort of day-to-day, what it's like to be there. And it's amazing. It's everything you think it is. So that's probably the coolest thing. And just to get to work with the Lucasfilm folks. They have this encyclopedic knowledge of the universe. Like, it's amazing.
So I don't know if many of our fans know this, but you were actually a lawyer. And you wrote your first, books just in your spare time.
That's right.
Now, getting to go from being a lawyer and now getting to be someone who's writing a Star Wars and now officially a part of the canon, like, is it just as surreal as I imagine it would be?
It's way better. Way better. Yeah, it's been pretty surreal. I've been very, very lucky that people have responded to my work and they've liked it. Like, clearly there was a need out there for that. Like, clearly people wanted to hear these stories, especially Indigenous stories in a modern and futuristic setting. So yeah, it's been pretty surreal.
Awesome. You had a panel yesterday about Indigenous voices in science fiction, and you let slip that you might have put a few Native characters into Resistance Reborn. And I've been reading the excerpts that they've been slipping out, every so often, and I think I may have spotted one. I don't know. Am I right? Am I wrong? Is it like...
I think there is an excerpt with a new character that's one of my own characters. That one I did not actually model after an Indigenous character, but you're close.
Okay.
Yeah, there are definitely you'll pick it up. There's some Pueblo names in there, and some people that I think clearly could like come to a feast day and we'd recognize them.
But there's definitely more than one Indigenous character in Resistance Reborn. Is that what
Maybe.
Maybe, possibly? I'm so excited. Can we talk about yesterday's panel a little
Yeah,
bit?
absolutely.
Sweet. So one of my favorite things that we talked about, or that you guys got to talk about yesterday, was how indigenous sci fiction, science fiction, is subversive in the way that it, just completely blows up the myth of all the Indians are dead. Is that something that's always on your mind whenever you are writing, or is that just something that just happens?
I made a really concentrated decision or concerted effort, I guess is a better way to put that, to write. So, my first book, Trail of Lightning, is set in the near future. And it was really important for me to write a story where natives are not just surviving an apocalypse, but thriving. They are sort of the top dog in this world, right? In a future world. And I wrote that book in present tense, which I thought, said something about we exist now. We are not part of, just history. We are here. We will be here. And that was something I really wanted to do. So I did make that was a conscious decision to do that. Yeah, and I think generally now that's just part of what I do. Like that's just part of my writing. I do have a sort of steampunk in mind. It's going to be sort of an indigenous steampunk that I haven't really talked about at all. And that will probably be set in the past, but it'll certainly be a different past than what we're getting from Hollywood or from other places, sort of this cowboys and Indians narrative.
The Italians in feathers.
Oh, yeah, no. I have a rule, no braids, no feathers, right? So, yeah.
One of the things that I really liked about, I think it's Trail of Lightning, there's this line where you say, we've already experienced the apocalypse. We've already lived through the apocalypse. So this new one isn't.
Yeah, no big deal.
No big deal,
Been there, done that. Yeah.
Is that your favorite line from the book, or do you have a favorite line from any of your work so far that really sticks out to you?
Gosh, I don't know. That's a tough question. I definitely like that idea. It's an important idea, and I think throughout my work, I think I'm trying to, particularly the Sixth World series, really show that we have survived our apocalypse, and now we are thriving. We're sort of building back. Having a longer sort of idea of history than just, America will be forever. And it's this, I remember there was an elder once and he was talking and he was saying, oh, well, America's just only been here for so many years. We'll survive that. We'll keep going. Whatever's next, we'll still be here. And I was like, oh, that's one way to think about it. I like it.
I also really loved us talking about. I was the person with the last question at the panel. We were talking about Stephen's tweet that said something along the lines of, the dream is that Indigenous representation reaches the point where we get the fry bread vendor.
Right.
And we talked a little bit. You got to respond a little bit about like what your dream is for Indigenous representation, and I kind of wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe talk about that a little bit more, especially at cons like this, at cons like New York Comic Con, and just how we're here obviously, but what is the dream one day?
I think the dream is for there to be as many characters and as many fans out there that get to cosplay those characters as we can stand. I want more indigenous authors writing more science fiction, fantasy, and horror. I want there to be so many choices. I want us on, TV and movies telling our own stories, both good and bad, villains and heroes, all sorts of humanity, and then maybe a little magic too. And, just to have sort of what everyone else has, and for it not to be stereotypes or not to be stuck in the past or not to be just the one shapeshifter, or something like that. Like, give us some cool powers. And for fans of all, like not just Indigenous fans, but for all fans to be able to embrace that, to be able to be like, I want to be that. So that would be awesome.
My favorite parts of fandom have always been comic books and superheroes. I don't know how much you love those parts of fandoms, but for me, X-Men was like the only thing I could ever depend on to have consistent Indigenous representation, whether or not that was quality or not. Depended on who was writing and definitely who was
Sure.
drawing it. But the one thing I've noticed in superhero, especially superhero movies, we're making strides. You know, Jason Momoa, Eugene Brave Rock, and Wonder Woman. But it's usually men. In fact, to my knowledge, the only Indigenous woman that's popped up in one of the superhero movies is Rachel House in Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
she's a New Zealand actress.
Okay.
If you could take a superhero, a female superhero, and reimagine her, or recast her with an Indigenous, background.
Yeah.
Who do you think you would like to pick or like to see?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I am not like the biggest fandom person.
Okay.
I just got outed. So I don't even know. I think I would like to see something original. I think
Okay.
I'd like to see maybe from an Indigenous storyteller, or some new character that's sort of free to be whoever she wants to be. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one.
That's okay. I'm going to send you some comics. It's going to be great.
Okay, great. I will read them.
Well, thank you so much for sitting with me. It's been
Yeah,
awesome.
thanks for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much.
Cool.